Hello everybody. So I didn't do any more reading since I woke up this morning. I actually woke up around 8 o'clock. So technically I had an hour left to my 24-hour readathon. But I don't know about you, but I can't just get up and start reading. As much as I love reading, that's not the first thing that I do. I dozed for another 30 minutes when I woke up. And then I scrolled on my phone for another 30 minutes. So by the time I got up to make breakfast, it was a little after 9. So what I did yesterday, it was all the reading I did for my 24-hour readathon. And I read a lot yesterday. I got a bunch of different challenges done yesterday. I'm still on the fence about picking something else for my pick a spooky read or spine-tingling novel. Sorry, I don't know if my collar is hitting the microphone. Right now, it vaguely counts. I didn't really talk about what it was yesterday. LT's Theory to Pets. I still don't know the title offhand. It's a short story that Stephen King wrote. It only exists as an audiobook. It's about this couple that in an attempt to save their marriage, they each bought the other person a pet. Like the LT, the husband, bought... Oh, it's windy. You're going to hear it on my microphone, sorry. LT, the husband, bought the wife a cat, and then the wife bought LT a dog. But the opposite happened. The dog bonded with the wife, and the cat bonded with the husband. And it was a sense of it was a source of contention for this couple until eventually LT comes home from work and then sees that his wife is gone. She writes a note saying, "Don't look for me, wait for me to contact you when I'm finally ready to file papers for a divorce. Right now I'm heading to my mom's, give me some space." But she never makes it to her mom's. In fact, in the area there is this X-Man, and the police think that the X-Man got her, but there's no body, there's no evidence of it, and so they just don't know. Now, this was on the weird side. LT would tell this story about this contention between him and his wife, like a funny anecdote to tell at dinner. It's more like he kept jokingly, he kept saying jokes yeah, this dog hated me, he puked in my slippers, he chewed on my curtains on my side of the bed. And it was funny. I can appreciate the humor of it. It didn't necessarily make me laugh out loud, but I can appreciate the humor of it. But it was weird that he kept telling this story, because the narrator is LT's friend. And the narrator keeps saying, yeah, he would tell the story at this event, at that event, and we kept howling. We thought it was hilarious, despite knowing what had happened at the end. I'm like, okay, well, what happened in the end? And that's when we find out that the wife disappears. I'm like, well, why are we talking about this as if it's a funny story, especially since the wife is most likely dead? So it was funny, and then moved all over to Disturbed. So I didn't necessarily feel that spine-tingling moment, because I didn't think it was scary until we found out what happened to the wife. And the wife, we assume we know what happened to the wife. We don't know what happened to the wife. And so it's more Disturbia rather than scary. Because there's that element of it being disturbed, that's where I'm sort of making it count for that challenge, but I think it just barely covers this challenge. So, which is why I keep thinking about maybe reading something else for it. I finished Rules of Vanishing yesterday. Rules for Vanishing, a group of friends go into the woods to try to find their missing friend. Our main character is the sister of the missing friend, and they all think that the legend of this magical road that the missing person went under or went through to try to find, they're like, well, it's obviously not real. We're going to go through this road just to confirm that this legend isn't real. And so we know that the friend just up and left with her boyfriend, excuse me. But they find out that the road is actually real. And so they have to go through this road to try to find the missing friend or the missing sister, depending on whose point of view you're going through. And they have to go through 7 gates in order to actually get back out again. There's no going back the other way on the road. You have to go forward until you get to the very end. This overall was very disturbed and very creepy, because along the way there was different monsters that they came across. It was more psychological rather than gory, but there was definitely elements of gore to it. Some of our friends didn't quite make it to the end. The coolest thing about this is actually that it's actually a collection of evidence in different files rather than strictly one person's point of view. So it definitely has that same format as Illuminae, but I think Illuminae did it so much more better, because I didn't realize that this was the case until I was a third of the way through the book. I'm like, oh, so we keep going through like files and video evidence, and what we think is actually Sarah, our main character's point of view, is actually her writing down her story. So I kind of wish that was made more clear, but overall still a very cool format. The format works for this type of story. I would watch the heck out of this, like if this was a miniseries or a movie. The back of the book kind of described it as like a Blair Witch sort of thing, and I think it would definitely work as like the same documentary style book. You know what I mean? I would watch the heck out of this. And I rated this 4 out of 5 stars. The first one, the LT series Pets, I rated that 3 out of 5 stars. Now, the last thing that I read last night, Witches, that comic book, a graphic novel, I had attempted to vlog it so I can be held accountable, but obviously that didn't quite happen. It's about witches, but not quite witches. This family moves to a new town, and they move to this new town because the girl actually witnessed witches kill her bully, and everybody thinks that she either did it or she had passed out through it, but they don't believe her when they say like these monsters took the bully. But because of this one incident, she keeps seeing the monsters at every other corner, and it's her trying to escape these monsters. And these monsters are actually witches. But you find out why the witches are after her. And it's so messed up. It's so twisted. I don't want to talk about it because I really don't want to spoil it for you guys, but it's definitely very gory. The art style is very gory. I am very intrigued by like the motive of why the witches were going after her. Because these witches, it's spelled with a Y. These witches are monsters that they eat those that have been pledged to them. So say someone puts this like pledged gunk on another person, they're basically sacrificing that person so the witches will grant them what they want. And someone did that to the girl, to our main character. And the why of the person that pledged her is astounding to me. I can't believe that they were willing to make that sacrifice. So obviously a lot of people died in very grotesque ways in this graphic novel, and reading it by flashlight definitely made it all the more scarier. Right now I've rated it 5 out of 5 stars. I might change it to a 4.5 or 4 if I think about it long enough, but I think it's going to stay at 5 stars. I just thought it was fantastic. The overall concept was amazing. I definitely want to read volume 2 in this series. I didn't do any other reading today. Like I said, I had a very slow start, and so by the time I did get up and ready to face the world, I needed to film a couple of booktube videos, which I did. I filmed the craft video for Spooktober. It's actually in my backpack. Hold on, I brought it. I kind of threw it in my bag without even thinking about it. It's probably squished at this point because it's paper. Oh yeah, it's a little squished. I made a bat corner bookmark, and it's very cute. It definitely was more hassle than it was. Yeah, I ended up getting ink and glue all over me. We got that craft done. I took a Bookstagram photo with it. All I need to do now is edit it and post it. Most likely it will go live tomorrow on the very last day that it's expected to go live. I started editing it before heading out, but I still have quite a bit of editing left to do on it. Then afterwards, I filmed my Spookathon TBR. I'm going to participate in that as well. So I filmed 2 videos, and then I took 2 more Bookstagram photos on the way to work. So I had a very productive morning despite having a very slow start. And now I'm outside waiting to go to work. It's 3:05. I have work at 4 o'clock. I'm going to go inside where it's warm. As you can see, it's now like chillier weather. So I'm going to go inside where it's warm, and I'm going to start reading Serpent and Dove. That's all I have for this check-in. I guess I'll check in with you guys later. Hello everybody. So it has been a couple days since I last checked in. I did vlog for a tiny bit, expecting to actually do a check-in later that day yesterday, but I didn't have the greatest day at work yesterday. I did my usual 9 to 2 at job number 1, which is the small special library. It was just a really frustrating day, and I listened to that folklore audiobook for a couple hours, but once I got home, I had no interest in reading. I just wanted to veg out and watch stupid stuff on YouTube, and so that's what I did. I ended up staying up much later than I meant to, so I had a slow start this morning. So again, not in the mood to really read this morning, so we really need to start buckling down since the readathon is ending in a couple days. What's today's date? I think today's the 11th. Yeah, today is the 11th, which means the readathon is ending on Sunday. I have every expectation to actually finish this folklore audiobook by end of day tomorrow. I have an hour before work today. I'm working my usual 1 to 5 at the small library branch associated with the public library that I work for. I've been listening to it to a tiny bit as I was walking, so I have about 3.5 hours left. And I'm listening to it on 1.5 speed, so I'm really just trying to finish it. At this point, I'm half tempted to rate it 2 stars, because some of these stories aren't fleshed out at all, so I don't understand why they even included them. Like, there's this one story where this gnome-like being pops out of the ground after a farmer disturbs a stone. No, I lie, that's a different story, because a lot of these stories are about farmers. This farmer goes to a house like, hey, do you have shoes? So I need them, and it's Christmas. Do you have shoes that I can have? And the lady goes, no, sorry, but I have this Christmas pudding you can take. He takes the pudding, and as he's traveling back home, the bowl falls and it breaks, and a fairy pops out, and the fairy starts screaming, take me home, and that's where it ends. Why was it included? And there was a couple stories like that. So I think I might be rating this 2 stars, only because at this point I'm starting to get real frustrated, and listening to this is starting to feel like a chore and not an enjoyable experience. Honestly, if it wasn't for a challenge for a readathon, I would DNF it at this point, because I'm just done with it. But the narrator's really nice, so it's definitely not getting a 1 star, but it's most likely not getting anything higher than a 2 star at this point. I did start Serpent and Dove. I'm only about 20 pages in. I didn't get very far with it on Wednesday. At this smaller branch, it tends to be a little bit quiet in the afternoons. Like, I have the chores that I need to do, and I'm usually done with those chores by like 2:30, sometimes 3 if I'm pushing it. And then I get to read for the rest of my shift. I don't know how I got caught on this. So the goal today is to read at least for 2 hours while at work, and try to get some reading done once I get home. But I do know that I have some movies to watch when I get home, because a few of them are actually due pretty soon. One of them is Spider-Man Far From Home, and that has a 200-person waiting list. I am not bringing it back only to wait in line for it again. So I don't know how much reading I'm going to get done when I get home, but the goal is to read for at least 2 hours at work today. But now that I have time before work, I'm going to get my flu shot, because that's very important. And then I'm going to eat my lunch and just relax a little bit before going into work. Hello, it's Saturday. I didn't actually check in after I checked in with y'all yesterday, but I did get stabbed for my health. I got my flu shot. This Walgreens is a little weird, actually. It doesn't have a private spot to where you can get your flu shot. You're like out in the open where everyone else is shopping, with this one little partition in front of you, but the other half is open to everyone else. So unless you know to wear a shirt that you can easily roll up the sleeve, you are exposed to the world. Not necessarily a huge fan of that, but it is super convenient to go to that location than anywhere else. But while I was at work, I did get as far as I wanted to. Like I said, I finished everything around the usual time, around 3 o'clock, and then I did read for a couple hours, and then after getting home last night, I did read a little bit more. My goal for yesterday was to get at like a third of the way through Serpent and Dove. I'm actually kind of enjoying this. A lot of the characters, they need to grow on you. How do I want to explain this? Basically, a witch and a witch hunter is forced to get married. That's the overall concept of this. Lou, who's the witch, is actually in hiding from her mother. Her mother wants to sacrifice her to end the persecution for witches. Lou's obviously not on board with that. She takes off and she's in hiding. And while she's escaping this particular witch hunter who doesn't know that she's a witch, she somehow frames him for assault. The whole situation is really convoluted. Anyways, to save his reputation and her going to prison, they agreed to get married. And this is kind of like a slow burn romance, from like enemies to lovers sort of story with them. And I liked the romance aspect of it, but the religious aspect of it is a lot. The church in the story is very much like the Catholic Church. Like, they go to Mass and like they say, may the Lord be with you, and the audience goes, and also with you. It's definitely supposed to represent a Catholic church. I mean, it's set in, I don't know what year, but it's set in like past France, so it makes sense that the religion in this would be Catholicism. Oh, so the witch hunter's name, I didn't say it. His name's Reed. But Lou and Reed are falling in love, but Lou doesn't want to let on that she's a witch, but she doesn't know what to do. There's like conflict about her being a witch and him being a witch hunter, obviously. And while the story progresses, like her mother is slowly cornering her. I went off on a tangent. I forget what I meant to say with the religious aspect of it. There's a lot of like patriarchy and misogyny stuff happening in regards to the women in the book. Like the men from this church believe that, they hold authority over women, women are property, and so that is really tough to read at times. But you can see that Reed and a couple of other characters are showing some character development and they don't necessarily think that anymore. Today I read some more after going to work. I did my usual, it's my usual now, I did my usual 9 to 1 at the public library job. But I actually had to wake up super early. Normally I get a ride to work, but I didn't get a ride today because my husband got into a car accident last night and the back end is pretty damaged. He's fine, thank goodness. He's absolutely fine. But the back end is damaged, which meant I didn't have a ride to work. But that gave me time to do some grocery shopping. I had to go grocery shopping at CVS because that was the most convenient place to buy some food to tide us over until we can get a rental. But I did that before going to work, which meant I had plenty of time to listen to that audiobook, that Folklore's audiobook, and I was done by the end of my shift. Because I just listened to it on 1.5 speed while I was working in the back room, like with the sorter and like putting everything away. My final thoughts on this is like, it got slightly better as I got towards the end. Like I really liked the Mossy Coat story, which was basically a different version of Cinderella, but like sorta. Like it smacked of elements of like Cinderella. But some of these stories were just bizarre. I want to rate this 3 out of 5 stars because I really like the narrator and I can appreciate where these stories are coming from. It's just, I wasn't overly impressed. But I did finally finish my Read a Fantasy Challenge for this readathon. So the last thing I need to do is finish reading Serpent and Dove and then watch Hocus Pocus. That's all I need to do now. And as soon as I got home, I did do some more reading. I'm 2/3 of the way through, and where this book is, I just left off at a cliffhanger, this massive plot twist that I just did not see coming. And of course, I have to stop reading for a while because a different readathon, I was going to say Hocus Pocus, but this Booktober readathon that's happening all month, there's a movie night happening tonight, and I want to participate in that, which means I'm going to have to finish this tomorrow. And thankfully tomorrow is the last day of the readathon. Like I'd be very surprised if I don't finish this tomorrow because I'm really into what's happening right now. I'm still holding on to hope that I'll read something else for that Read a Spine Tingling book. We're going to see how tomorrow goes. Hello everybody. So I have my microphone on so you can hear me better, but not any background noise. My husband is actually currently playing D&D online with a bunch of people, so you may hear that. But I figured at least doing this, you'd be able to hear it a little bit less. Anyways, I just finished Serpent and Dove. Today is the last day of the readathon, which meant I had to finish this by today because this is the group book. And I have some thoughts. Overall, I really enjoyed this. I really liked the overall conflict and I appreciated the romance. However, I didn't care for the world building. I felt like the world building was kind of non-existent. Like I had a hard time like imagining the worlds. World building is my favorite part of fantasy, and so I'm always like a little salty when I don't get it completely. There's a lot of French words in this, but there's nothing that specifically says this takes place in Paris, this takes place in France. I think it's supposed to take place in like a fantasy complement to France, but it's not France. And I couldn't quite tell what the year is supposed to be. Like obviously it takes place in a year or in a culture that uses cloaks for warmth during winter. So I believe it's supposed to be in that like medieval sort of space. Again, this is a fantasy novel, so you're not supposed to take everything at face value, like where the places are. Like, it's not supposed to be like another place because it's a fantasy novel. It's a fantasy place. But I think using a lot of French words really like muddles that perspective. It definitely took me out of the, oh, what's the word that theater likes to use? It made it harder to suspend my disbelief. I also felt like some of the characters were really like cookie cutter stereotypes. Like the book focuses, of course, on our main characters, but it then introduced like little side characters that you barely saw, but still had like a huge impact in the book. I'm not sure why the prince was involved at the end. He kind of like shows up out of nowhere towards the end, and then it's like, well, I guess I'll help. Why do you have to help though? Like his scene at the end was hilarious, but why did you include it? So certain aspects of the story it was weak. It was very weak. But I still enjoyed it. I still think it's a fun read, and overall I rated this 3.5 stars. So now that I've completed every single challenge, all I have to do now is watch Hocus Pocus today, which I of course plan on doing that. But since I still have time, I think I'm gonna try to read this for like read a spine tingling novel. It's very short. It's a ghost story. That's all I know about this, and hopefully this will be a better choice for the read a spine tingling novel. But if I don't get to it, I still completed that challenge. Alrighty, so I read something else to count for read a spine tingling book. Instead of Stephen King's LT's Theories Guide to Pets or Theory to Pets or whatever that book is, I'm not thinking straight at the moment. I've been reading all day and I have a headache. But instead of using that to count for this challenge, I read The Grown Up by, is it Gillian or Gillian? Gillian Flynn? I'm going to guess it's Gillian Flynn. I haven't read anything by her, so if I am mispronouncing her name, let me know. This is definitely spookier than LT's Theory to Pets. This story is actually about a girl who's lived a very rough life. First, her mom takes her out begging, and then they start conning people for money. And then she eventually strikes out on her own when she turns 18, or roughly around that time. And she answers an ad to be a receptionist, and she uses her skills as a con artist there. Working in the psychic area of the shop, she comes across Susan, this like mousy lady, and this mousy lady is having issues with her stepson, and she thinks her house may be haunted. And in order to keep up the act, this girl, I don't even think she says what her name is. It's all from first person, and I don't think we find out what her real name is. Her boss calls her Nerdy, so I guess that's what we'll call her. So in order to keep up the act, Nerdy goes to the house and starts like saging the place, and she makes it to where like, well, I have to come back several times, there's multiple payments, and she like keeps up the con. But it's very clear shortly after arriving to the house, she's in way over her head. Some creepy stuff does go down throughout this very short book. So the beginning was very strong. It definitely has a beginning that makes you stop for an absolute second. You know what the first line is? Let me read you the first line. I didn't stop giving handjobs because I wasn't good at it. I stopped giving handjobs because I was the best at it. What? Now that I'm thinking about it, I might have read something else by her, but it's been so long that I still was not prepared for that first line. As much as I enjoyed the beginning, I was a little disappointed in the end. I wanted a much spookier ending. It was still very interesting and not something I expected. So I'm rating this 4 out of 5 stars because as much as I was slightly disappointed that it was not super spooky by the end, I was still really intrigued by it. So fast, easy read because it's so short, really interesting, really intriguing, 4 out of 5 stars. I'm really glad that I picked this up to try to like make up for that previous challenge because I felt like that first book was such, I don't know, I felt like this was slightly cheating with that one, and now I'm really glad that I've read this. So I've completed all of my reading challenges, and all I have to do now is watch Hocus Pocus, which I will do later tonight. I'm going to watch a different movie with my husband first, and then I'm going to put in Hocus Pocus. Hello. So I just finished Hocus Pocus. As always, it was a treat to watch, and while I was watching it, I had actually audited. See, it is late. I need to go to bed. I edited my Spookathon TBR video, and it will go live at 1 p.m. tomorrow when I start, roughly when I start. vlogging for Spookathon. Overall, in regards to points, I got all the points I needed. I think you needed to get like a total of 50 points, but I got an extra 2 points for every like book I read that had a witchy character, and I had 3 books that at least mentioned a witch character, and so in total I got 56 points for the readathon, so well over the amount that I needed, and I totally rocked this readathon. But that's everything that I read. Let me know down in the comments below if you agreed with everything or anything that I said about these books. If you disagreed, please feel free to talk about that down in the comments. And as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I guess it's ta-ta for now. Bye, guys.